July 1943. The open steppe south of Kursk. A German commander stands in the turret of a Tiger, the most feared tank on Earth, at the head of the greatest armored force his country has ever assembled. Thousands of tanks are about to collide on these fields in the largest tank battle in the history of the world. And a mile ahead of him, something is sitting on a low rise that his gunner cannot kill. He watches an armor-piercing round, the round that smashes any tank in existence, strike its hull and skip off like a stone off water. Then, that thing on the rise fires once, and the Tiger beside him simply comes apart. This is what happens when one modern armored unit is dropped into the Battle of Kursk. Here is what really happened. By the summer of 1943, the Germans wanted one more decisive blow in the east, and they aimed it at a huge Soviet bulge in the line around the city of Kursk. The plan was Operation Citadel, two massive pincers, one from the north and one from the south, meant to bite off the salient and trap the armies inside. To do it, the Germans brought their newest steel, the Tiger with its deadly 88mm gun, the brand new Panther making its combat debut, though only about 200 were ready and they kept breaking down, and the 65-ton Ferdinand tank destroyer, lethal at long range but built without a whole machine gun, which left it strangely helpless against infantry up close. The Soviets were waiting, dug in deep with thousands of T-34s. When the two sides finally slammed together near Prokhorovka on July 12th, it became one of the most famous tank clashes ever fought. For decades, it was remembered as a catastrophic German defeat, though modern historians have shown the Soviets actually lost far more tanks there than the Germans did. Either way, Citadel failed, and the Soviets seized the momentum they would keep until Berlin. Now drop one modern unit into the middle of it. On the morning of July 5th, as the German southern pincer rolls forward, a small modern American armored team is sitting in its path. A company of M1A2 Abrams main battle tanks and a handful of M2 Bradleys with their crews. A few dozen vehicles, 80 years out of their time, facing roughly 6,000 tanks. The rules are simple. Nothing comes through with them, so every main gun round and every drop of fuel is finite. There is no GPS in 1943, but it barely matters, because the thing that wins a tank fight here is not navigation. It is who sees who first. And this is not a fair fight, so the real question is not whether they win the engagement. It is whether even total superiority can survive 6,000 tanks, and what it does to the Eastern Front if it can. Let's see the Germans first. The men at Kursk are veterans, and their machines are the best of their age. A Tiger's 88 can kill any tank that existed in 1943 from a mile away. The whole German plan is built on that gun reaching out and killing first. Now the gap. The Abrams is not a better 1943 tank. It is a different species. Its armor, layered steel, and depleted uranium was built to stop modern rounds. So an 88mm shell that cracks any Tiger or T-34 just scars the paint. Its 120mm gun kills anything at Kursk well past 2 miles. And its thermal sights see heat, which means it finds a tank by its warm engine through smoke, through dust in the dark, and hits it while moving at 40 miles an hour. The German tank has to see its target. The Abrams crew sees everyone, first, always. That single fact decides every duel before it starts. The southern pincer comes on exactly as it did in history. A wedge of Tigers and Panthers grinding across the wheat. The lead German crews are scanning the horizon for Soviet armor. They never see what hits them. The Abrams open fire from beyond 2 miles, ranges where a 1943 gunner cannot even make out a target, let alone hit one. The first Tigers are gone before the sound arrives. The Panthers, already throwing tracks and breaking down on their own, push into the same invisible line and die the same way. The Ferdinands, deadly at distance but blind and slow, are picked off one by one. Whole companies of the finest tanks in the world are being destroyed by an enemy they cannot locate. Up the chain, the German command cannot make sense of the reports. Entire battalions are calling in catastrophic losses to a force that shows up on no map, fielding tanks no intelligence officer has ever heard of. Some commanders assume a new Soviet secret weapon. Others assume their own crews have lost their nerve. The truth that they have driven straight into the next century is not something the German army has a form to file. For the German crews, it is not a battle. It is a hand reaching out of the future and switching them off, one vehicle at a time, and nothing they were taught has a word for it. But here is the catch, and it is the whole reason Kursk is the right battle for this question. This is the largest tank battle in history, 6,000 tanks. A modern Abrams carries about 40 rounds. 40. A single Abrams could kill 40 tanks and have nothing left but a machine gun. A dozen of them could break the spearhead of an army, and they do. But behind that spearhead is another, and behind that, the deep Soviet reserves. Thousands more T-34s rolling up from the rear. The modern unit is not in danger of losing a fight. It is in danger of running out. Every round spent is gone. Every gallon of that thirsty turbine's fuel is gone. The math that makes this interesting is not armor versus armor. It is 40 rounds versus 6,000 tanks, and a clock that only runs down. So the crews start fighting like accountants. Every shot has to count. Every reload matters. And the gunners begin choosing which targets are worth a round and which to let roll closer. A modern tank rationing its fire in the middle of the largest tank battle in history is still winning every single exchange, and still, slowly, being buried under the sheer arithmetic of the Eastern Front. Neither side can fight the modern tanks the way they were trained, so they do what desperate, capable armies do. They stop showing themselves. They use the dust and the smoke and the folds of the ground. They try to swarm in close, where a lucky shot to a track or an optic can at least stop one of these things, because no one can penetrate it head-on. The Soviets, masters of artillery, walk barrages across the rises hoping for a top hit. And once in a while, it works just enough to matter. A T-34 bursts from a tree line at 50 yards and lands a hammer blow on a Bradley's flank. A shell craters the ground under a track. None of it kills the modern crews, but it is a reminder that even a machine from the future can be stopped if you are willing to throw enough men and steel into the gap. It is not hopeless courage for nothing. A thrown track is a thrown track even on an Abrams, and a tank that cannot move in a sea of enemies is a tank in trouble. The crews of 1943 were among the best who ever lived. Against anything from their own century, they would have won. They were simply born 80 years too early to fight this. So, the modern unit shatters the German offensive faster and more completely than the real Red Army ever could. Citadel does not just fail, it evaporates. The cream of the German Panzer Arm, the Tigers and Panthers Germany, was counting on for the rest of the war, burns on the steppe in a few days. And here is the part worth sitting with. Breaking the Germans at Kursk does not hand the future to the good guys in a clean way. The real Kursk is the moment the Soviet Union took the initiative and never gave it back. Make that victory faster and cheaper, and you do not just beat Hitler sooner. You hand Stalin a stronger, less bloodied Red Army, rolling west years ahead of schedule. The map of Europe after the war, the line where the Iron Curtain falls, all of it shifts. One modern unit could end the deadliest land battle in history in an afternoon, and in doing so, redraw the entire Cold War. That is the strange weight of dropping the future into 1943. You do not just change who wins the battle, you change who inherits the peace. So you tell me, is there anything at Kursk, any tank, any tactic, any number that lays a glove on a modern main battle tank? Or does it come down to that one brutal figure, 40 rounds against 6,000 tanks? And if you could drop that unit there, knowing it would crush the Nazi offensive but strengthen Stalin's hand, would you still do it?